started, kind of an introduction to yourself for our new folks, so they know who you are.
Okay, you want to start? You're looking at me.
I'm looking at Sue.
Looking at me.
I
Okay.
can look at Sue.
I'm
It's us.
Sue. I'm Sue Foley Ferguson. And just historically, I've been on this board for many, many years. I think probably one of the reasons why the council has put term limits on. Because it's been 20 years since when we first started. I was the chair of this committee after being on the Open Space Committee, Road Services Committee, and then town council for 6 years. And so
And you were the chair for about 20 years.
and I was, yes, and we did a lot and it was great and whatnot, but I'm, I've begged down and I'll be off at the end of this term. But I'm willing to help when
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. And, oh, that's the other thing is, geez, isn't there a rule about Black Point Road? I live on Black Point Road across from Ketcha.
Off of Broad.
Across from Ketcha is where.
Okay.
And I live across.
Oh, okay.
2 doors down.
Okay. So you get stopped by the bus.
And Tom Doherty and I were like this.
Nicole Hall, Scarborough Community Services.
Nicholas, Scarborough Community Services.
I'm Rick Murphy. I'm a member of the board. Haven't been on quite as long as Sue, but it's been a while. And I joined in this year.
Erin Shoup, I am the town council liaison.
Steve Zamraz, new member.
I'm an observer.
That's okay.
Maggie Vishno, I am also retired. I'm trying to remember how long, it hasn't been a year. That I've been.
It's close. It's good.
You're no longer the newest member. I'm no longer the newest member, right. And I'm also on the Conservation Commission on this task. And we just finished the open space plan committee, which was a short term, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Maggie was the liaison for the Conservation Commission to the open space plan, right?
Hey, I'm Noah Perlett. Yeah, been on this group for a couple terms. I live over near the Blue Point School. Yeah. Welcome. I'm Doug Williams. I've been here since I helped write the ordinance. That was a result, just from a standpoint of education. Writing the ordinance that created Parks and Conservation and board to help with and also created the idea of the town bonding the purchase of land. Came out of the original open space plan that's done in the early 2000s, 2001 or so. So this is a follow-up, and many of the things, if you go back and read that, the recommendations, many of those things are repeated again in the recommendations of the current open space plan. So it'll be useful for us to be able to do that. And I will also be gone after the year.
Some old time.
And I'm Jessica Sargent, the current chair. With a lot of help from Sue. I'm on my second term, and just also I'm vice chair of the Conservation Commission. So just really excited to have everybody here. I think that works as attendance, which then moves us into our next phase, which is public comments. Do we have any public comments today?
I've got a comment. I just want to let everybody know that the land trust recently was able to conserve 30 acres along the Nonsuch River. It is located, I don't know if it was in the leader. If you got a chance to take a look at that. It's located right along the border of the towns of Scarborough and Gorham. Majority of it is in the town of Gorham, but as we know, watersheds and rivers don't always conform to town boundaries. And so the important role that the Nonsuch River plays in Scarborough was the leading reason why we decided to go ahead and conserve that. We purchased the property within Scarborough without using land bond funds. We were able to do it solely on the donations through our organization. So just to let you know, the intent is to protect its values, conservation values, as well as create a trailhead and put trails on property for recreation. And allow for access to the Nesset River fishing and bird watching, et cetera.
So did you say your name for the new members?
Oh, sorry, my name is Scott Crumpler. I'm the Conservation Director at the Land Trust.
Just for new members.
Can I make a comment about his comment?
I think so.
I don't know if it is. I'll make a comment, so I'll help.
I don't think you can fight with me.
Oh, okay. Not this time anyway, Scott. I know where your office is. As we move forward, how are we ensuring that acreage like that is being entered into some sort of a database that is created through the open space plan, which was created. I mean, when at the workshop, at the workshop at the council the other day, it was clear that both the town manager and the council are expecting things to be updated, there to be database, there to be this, there to be that. But I'm not sure anybody's in charge, and I don't think there's any resources out there. So it's just something to keep in mind, because somehow we want to grab those acreage in Scarborough and add them to that total so we can update the open space.
That's
reporting.
great.
And one of the basic recommendations is this, that we update the regular basis. But we need it for the 30x30 stuff anyways.
Did the GIS put together the open space one?
Yeah.
No,
Well, it's in-
or was it
it's
an
in
outside?
GIS. It wasn't done by the town, done by
Okay.
the consultants. So the issue is, how we get access to that, how we make sure that it's built in. I think one of the failings of our plan 20 years ago, that we did that work, never integrated it into town staffing functions. And we're just now, over the last couple of years, have gotten GIS capability to help us with this process. And that's great. Because somehow, I just want everybody who's here, look at everybody.
I am
to
too.
think about how do we,
I'm having a comment on that. I don't wanna go sideways, but I think I feel overwhelmed with that plan. And I think we said to them at the workshop, what's the biggest thing that we could do? And they said, create an interactive website. So you can constantly update. And I think that's maybe something that we need to pursue as through staff is. Now that we have the plan, I mean, really, it's overwhelming. What do you do next? They said you need to make it interactive so the residents know what you're doing and keep it updated.
absolutely.
Well, and
So I
link
get
it,
that, hearing that comment, this conversation, I think that reaffirms that recommendation.
and link it to a database.
Right, exactly.
Well, this committee has a charge, coming out of this to update what we do consistent with what's in the plan to the extent it's appropriate. And that's something that we can all decide what is appropriate, what should we be doing? But certainly that's, we have to have that to be able to incorporate their mapping, for example, into our maps. And our maps need to be updated so that when people look at documentation, they're not seeing maps referencing 2002 or 2001 or whatever it was, even though a lot of them are already updated, but it's using our updated maps. But those aren't recorded effect on managers and stuff like that.
Right.
I said, well, that Parks and Conservation is using outdated maps, and went up to a country and said, no, they're using very updated maps. They don't know where. I also suggested that they workshop with us.
Yes, so that's our topic for our workshop on April 3rd, meaning the open space plan. I think that we have been very transparent with council recently about our recommendations. I think a recommendation out of that workshop could be the frequency that those maps are updated. I think real time is unrealistic, just, it's recommending every 6 months and then making sure that's transparent, that that's a 6-month update, and then making sure those updates happen every X period of time, but I think we should discuss that next meeting. Because it is really important, especially as we are moving towards the goal of 30 by 30. I assume council would be open to that sort of recommendation from this group, because, you know, we really do deal those maps on the most frequent basis with any committee. Any other?
Yes, I have some two quick questions. First, on the, congratulations on the new parcel. Can you tell us the name of the parcel and of the 30 acres, how many of those acres are in Scarborough?
Yes, so of the 30, approximately 6.5, 6.5 acres in Scarborough. We don't have an official name yet. That's got to go through our committee to name it. You could use maybe a working title at this point. I've just been calling it like the Mitchell Hill Preserve.
Thank you.
And what road is that?
Sorry,
What road?
it's on Mitchell Hill Road.
Any other public comments or comments on the public? And there's no one on the line.
No.
So moving on to the approval of minutes, thank you, Rick, for pulling this together. That's a huge help. Did anyone, so do we have a motion to approve the January 9th minutes, which were provided in the agenda? Second. Any discussion or changes? Seeing none, all those in favor? They're approved. So our next agenda item, unless there are agenda, is the application of the Weaver Book, which is 49 Grant Road. And I anticipate this will be the majority of our meeting today. So for folks who have not been through this process before, we received an application from the Scarborough Land Trust for the Weaver Book property, also known as 49 Grant Road. What we do is we take that application and we go through the land acquisition assessment form. And we assign points based on a myriad of categories, which Doug and Sue have the entire history of, because in their heads. So if you have any questions, they're really your go-to people on the intention and history of those categories. So we usually go category by category. You are seeing some pre-filled, and those are based on the GIS analysis that was done by town staff. But we still discuss even the GIS components, because, for example, I disagree in a couple of spots with the way things were calculated. So, you know, we don't just accept them, we discuss each category. And we are kind of using the reason why there's a lot of color is that we've tried to add some explanation into how they are calculated. So that's why you see various colors, but we're just gonna kind of walk through that now as a board and have a discussion. We're probably gonna go back between this form, the application itself, and the maps. A lot of the categories are dependent, if not directly on GIS mapping, then also the maps themselves. Am I missing anything?
And for anybody that didn't have that AEP booklet, they are in the binders, so.
So there are binders for Zam, for Maggie,
Zam,
For
have you
Noah.
given?
for Nick. And I think we made some extra copies
Yeah.
because I do anticipate we are gonna have 2 alternate members at our workshop. Which is very exciting, and I think that those names are, they were read for me last night. So we have a couple extra copies for our new alternates. Who will join us next? Next session, okay. So, it is often the case that we also ask questions of the applicant, so, or clarification. This is a bit more interactive as we have the applicant here. Do you want to give us an introduction, Scott, to the property?
Sure, yes. Do we have do we have access to like the pictures and the maps and things like that from the application?
I believe.
I'm sure we do. Hold on, Ron.
Awesome. And,
We do, we just have to.
and just, is there like a pointer? Do you guys have a pointer by any chance?
A what?
Like
Laser
red
pointer?
laser pointer,
Oh,
point up on the screen. Okay.
So for those who, please let me know if you don't have access to the Google Drive for members, if you don't have access to the Google Drive, and I can get, I don't have permission abilities, but I can get Micah to give you access. These are in the Parks and Conservation Land Board applications file. And, there is a folder specific to this application.
We want the maps. Is that what I'm
You
hearing?
want the map, you want the photos?
Why don't we start with the map first, just to get oriented with the information. Okay. So I just want to say, so again, I'm Scott Crunkler, I'm the Conservation Director for the Land Trust. Thank you all for allowing me to bring this application to you today. This is our, what we're calling our Beaver Brook Conservation Area, or at least that's our working title at this point. The area that we're looking to conserve. Okay, well, I can't.
It's hard to see in that.
Do you want me
Get on
to
the
zoom
screen.
it in?
oh, there it is.
Try the other map.
I think it's not working on the screen.
Yeah, it's on my walls.
Okay. But I'll just, you can see it there, the red area is the area that we're looking to conserve. The green property is our Beaver Brook Preserve, which we conserved, last year in October. Using a mix of state funding from Land for Maine's Future and town bond funding, as well as, private donations. And also Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund, which is also state funded. So this property is 60 acres. It consists of undeveloped forests, wetlands, vernal pools, and riparian habitat. And we will be conserving it through a conservation easement. Oh, just to kind of step back again. So where we're looking at here is West Beach Ridge Road is what Beaver Brook Preserve is located on. And then where West Beach Ridge Road ends, it makes a right turn, turns into a private road, Grant Road. You go to the end of Grant Road, and that's where the conservation area will begin within the red box. So one thing that makes this project just a little different from what we brought to, from what I brought to you in the past, is that this will be a conservation easement. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with a conservation easement is a legal agreement between a landowner and a qualified organization such as a land trust, or it can be a government agency. And it's used to protect land by restricting development on that private land. So a couple of important points that different from what SLT, what we typically do, which is buy land, with an easement, the landowner retains ownership of the property. All right, that's one important point. The other important point is that the right of the landowner to develop the property is extinguished. So we remove, the conservation easement removes that right from the bundle of rights that the property owner has over their property. And another important point is that this restriction on development is permanent, meaning even if they sell their property to somebody else, that restriction follows the property. And so that new landowner also is restricted from developing the property. So the strength of this easement, the ability to restrict that development, is backed not only by Maine state law, but has also been successfully defended in the courts over the years. So conservations are a very strong method of conserving land, and therefore they are a very common and a very popular way to conserve land around the country. And I found some statistics for you that across the US, there are over 70,000 conservation easements conserving over 37 million acres. According to the Land Trust Alliance, which is a national organization that that land trusts are part of, just land trusts across the country have conserved 20 million acres through easements, whereas they've only conserved 8 million acres through ownership. So you can see easements across the country are used about 2.5 times more often to conserve land than just through ownership. And here in Maine, through land trusts and governments and other agencies, Maine has conserved approximately 3.5 million acres, of which about half of that has been conserved with conservation easements. But not any property can be conserved with a conservation easement. The property needs to show that it has conservation values. In order to be protected. So there, in other words, there has to be a reason to protect this land. There has to be a conservation reason to protect the land through a conservation easement. And some of these conservation values include things like the easement will protect natural areas like forests, grasslands, wetlands, rivers, and streams. It will protect fish and wildlife habitat. It will protect scenic views, and it can protect working lands like for forestry and agriculture. But they don't, an easement doesn't need to incorporate all of those items. It can do just one of those things. So what conservation values does Beaver Brook Conservation Area have?
Can you just, I don't know if I wanna interrupt now,
Sure.
but this is gonna come up late. I'm definitely gonna ask this question later, so I
Okay.
wanted to, regarding conservation easement, could you please explain how you get to the value of a conservation easement? Because it's not the full 100% value.
It's not the
And-
highest and best.
It's not the highest and best use, and I want everybody, the new members, to understand how it's assessed. How the easement value is actually assessed.
So it's done just like with purchase of land, we get an appraisal. And so the government agency that really regulates conservation easements in the country, in the US, is the IRS. And they have strict regulations on what type of appraisals and who can do those appraisals. And the appraiser that we use is qualified with the IRS to do conservation easement appraisals. So we get an appraisal just like we would for land. The only difference is that you're really getting two appraisals. So you basically are taking, the appraiser will appraise the property value as if it was up for sale for purchasing the entire property. And then they will do an appraisal based off of what the value of the property is with the easement on, with the restrictions from development. And then they just basically minus the two, and that's the value of the conservation easement.
Thank you.
Yes, and so to your point, one of the things that makes conservation easements popular is that you can conserve property at a less price than you would if you have to do full ownership, because you're not buying the entire property, you're not buying the entire bundle of rights. You're basically just buying the ability to restrict or extinguish that one right of development. And usually to include subdivisions as well, right? So remove those. So what values does Beaver Brook Conservation Area hold that we would use in conservation easements to protect this? Well, it includes forests, it includes fish and wildlife habitat, and it has significant water resources, including wetlands, protections of streams, and vernal pools. So I want to talk a little bit about the water resources first, and you can see them on the map. Within that red area, you know what?
Do you have another image?
Did you have another map?
Yeah, the other maps.
I think that map I was trying to show just the amount of development that has occurred around Beaver Brook area over the past, and this is a
Is this the one?
zoomed in, yes, this is a little more zoomed in on the property itself. So you can see within the red area, the blue shaded parts are the wetlands, the pink kind of circular globular parts over on the right. Those are all the vernal pools, so I actually went out and mapped all the vernal pools on the property. The Beaver Brook is the blue line that runs through the middle of those wetlands as it makes its way down. So those are some of the examples of the water resources. So there's 31 acres of wetlands on the property. There's 8 vernal pools, of which 7 contained egg masses of amphibians when I took a look last spring. And there's about 3,500 feet of frontage on Beaver Brook. And that includes, as you can see, it's basically the headwaters of the brook. And so being at the headwaters of Beaver Brook, you know, any impacts that we put on that stream at that location is gonna be carried throughout the entire stream, all the way down. It impacts everything downstream of that area, and Beaver Brook is a tributary of Scarborough Marsh. So, as we know, the Scarborough Marsh is Maine's largest contiguous saltwater marsh, and it's an area of statewide ecological importance, as identified by the state of Maine. And a Maine Natural Areas Program review recently stated that, and I quote, riparian corridors such as Beaver Brook, which is within a watershed with increasing development pressure, is beneficial to the ecology of the marsh, its habitats, and the species that depend on it, end quote. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also recognizes the importance of Beaver Brook. They had a collaboration called Nature's Network. And Nature's Network has identified Beaver Brook as part of an aquatic core network that supports a broad diversity of aquatic species and ecosystems on which they depend. So Beaver Brook is a very important stream that we're looking at to protect, which is why it's, we find, we're looking to protect this property. Part of the protection of the stream is going to be protecting those wetlands. And I know there's been a lot of talk recently about the importance of wetlands. And I'll just reiterate, wetlands are vital to the stream because not only do they reduce the impacts of flooding, so we have large storm events, rain events, those wetlands can absorb a lot of water and hold it back so that it doesn't go downstream, it doesn't flood. So you're reducing impacts of flooding. And then in the reverse, during the summers and during drought periods when there isn't a lot of rain, those wetlands will then slowly release the water and keep the streams running a stream. So it maintains those streams in those dry times, which is critical for fish, for other animals to be able to use it, and just for the stream itself, for the hydrology and the marsh to be able to provide that fresh water throughout the year. The other aspect is the vernal pools. Vernal pools are a type of wetland that are temporary. They fill up in the spring and in the fall, and the summer times when it dries out, they dry out. They are critical habitat for amphibians. And like I said, when I walked the property last spring, there were egg masses in 7 of the vernal pools. So this is a very productive area for amphibians. And, one role amphibians play is that they're one of the bases of the food chain, so a lot of animals as you go up the food chain are relying on amphibians for their survival. And as we speak of wildlife, a number of other animals use the property, and I'll show you with some pictures. I don't know, maybe we could go to the picture section real quick. If you could open up the animals picture one. I included a bunch of pictures in here because we've got great shots. The landowner keeps game cameras on his property. And so we've got great pictures of different wildlife that he has seen within the area.
Not in the
This is,
wildlife.
go to the other one. So, yeah, the picture ball, yeah. So here's one of his game cameras. So it's not only protecting, very common species like deer. There's some deer pictures, some bucks. Over there, some fawns on the right. You can see they're kind of hidden in the trees, which is kind of what their coloration is supposed to do, is kind of hide them in there. There's some turkeys that use the property, but also a little more uncommon species. Porcupine. There's a porcupine picture. There's a bobcat on the property. Fisher was spotted. Gray fox.
Wait, slow down, slow down.
Gray fox going through.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting to see they can be very well camouflaged in their habitat. Keep going through. This one should be a red fox.
The closer.
And another picture of a red fox going through. Coyotes
Oh, wow.
and even black bear. So right there in the middle geographic center of Scarborough, pretty much geographic center, we've got black bears running around. So this is, and there's another picture of a black bear. So this is a very important area to protect those species as they're going through Scarborough in some of these last remaining undeveloped areas within the town. And Nature's Network, what I was telling you about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife collaboration, they've identified approximately 33 acres of the 60 acres as core habitat for imperiled species. So these are areas that contain habitats that are likely to support high levels of imperiled terrestrial and aquatic species, including 600 species of the greatest conservation need. So some of the ones that are on the list are the main threatened spotted turtle, the main species of concern wood turtle, and the partners in flight species of concern wood thrush. So all of those species could use this property as habitat. And in addition, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service looks at this area as part of one of their focus areas, providing priority habitat for wetland-associated migratory birds and waterfowl, including the American black duck, the wood duck, and some other priority species. So kind of taking a step back, the property itself, I'm going to go back to the map again. The property itself is where it's part of a larger conservation vision for the land trust and for the town. It will connect to the Beaver Brook Preserve. So it's going to create approximately 92 acres of undeveloped property right along Beaver Brook. It's also part of a 358 acre undeveloped habitat block. So that's 358 acres identified in Scarborough, contiguous without development, that if you were to allow development in the area, it's going to fragment and break up that block of habitat, which is it's important to have larger blocks of habitat for wildlife and for water protection. It's going to further 2 town conservation goals. The first being the one in the comprehensive plan that aims that significant natural resources and open space should be protected. It also will further the town's 30 by 30 goal to conserve 30% of the land in town by 2030. And although it has not been approved yet by the council, the property is within the town's draft open space plan within the priority areas for conservation.
Could you repeat what you said about the acreage, the number? So that this conservation easement is how much?
60 acres.
60 acres.
Yes.
And then you were saying it's part of a larger.
Yeah, so it will connect to Beaver Brook, so it'll create 91 acres of contiguous, or 92 acres of contiguous undeveloped habitat.
Protected.
Protected, yep. Yep. And then it's part of a larger, what the state identifies as a undeveloped habitat block. So the state looks at these larger blocks and they have identified it as part of a 358 acre undeveloped habitat block.
And the importance of that is the larger species like bear and moose need those larger blocks.
space.
Yeah.
And where is that 350? I don't see much. Is that over this area?
Oh, the other protected.
Up
Up in here?
no, it would be within,
Right.
yes, that area, yep, right in that.
There's 350 acres in there somewhere?
Yeah, I'd have to look at I could pull up the map. I mean, you guys have these undeveloped habitat block maps too. We could take a look at it.
That's.
So can you just remind us like the status of the grant parcel? You have highlighted here.
The stats of it?
You have it, adjacent to it, suggesting that it has some value to this conservation conversation. Can you explain why that is?
I'm sorry.
So in this map right here, you have
Beaver Brook.
the proposed, you have the proposed.
Conservation grant?
You have the Beaver Brook highlighted.
Yep.
And then you have a purple one that says the grant property next to it.
Oh, okay, yes.
Can you please describe to us why that is highlighted and what's the conservation value relative to these other parcels?
So the entire parcel that the grants own is within the purple area and includes the red area. So they own 140 acres.
Grant is the last name, not that it's a grant.
Yeah, it's.
Correct. Yes, the grant.
Yeah.
It's the grant family. It's actually,
I had time with that.
yes, it's.
I read
Good
it,
point.
I read it as
Yes.
grant.
That's a
Older.
good point.
You?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
We're looking for a grant for the grant property along Grant Road.
I doubt it will be granted.
Boo. So that's their entire parcel, and the part that we're conserving is a subset of their parcel, which is 60 acres. So the remaining parcel is not part of the conservation area.
Okay. All right. Thank you for making that clear.
Yep.
That was not clear, like to me originally.
Okay,
Um,
yep, yeah, no, thank you for fixing that.
An interesting point is that Mr. Brand was involved with the.
Yeah, he was on the original open space committee.
Yes,
And the
That's what comes from-
development of the bonding process.
yes.
It's been a supporter for many years, and I think that's part of the reason that this parcel, when you look at it, that first map that all that up. And you look at the development, you know, everything's, Mr. Grant's property has been developed out there. He's had,
Tonight.
Sort of a conservation desire for a long time, I believe.
Yes. And that's what we're looking, that's one of our priority areas is to protect that area. Because it is an island of undeveloped area that's left within Scarborough, that plays a very important role to Beaver Brook and to the Marty.
Can you tell me who owns the parcel next to the brook that's between Beaver Brook and the Red Line? That sort of long,
The Thames family owns, and it's different owners throughout that area that to the right of Beaver Brook Conservation Area.
but there's no connectivity right now to it, like,
That, the area, right, the only areas that are conserved right now are the green and what we're
it's
proposing.
just interesting to me.
Because it raises the issue of that space, that
little
land
space.
between Beaver.
Yeah.
Brook And the pass-through connector. That you negotiate, which is great. That's really high value and based on what we know in the open space plan, because of the. Confidence in the two streams up there, and it can't be built.
Okay,
So can I ask you a question about the easement, please?
sure.
If you're, sorry, I go back and let's.
We're just like the courts.
No, I mean, if you want to ask, or I can keep going, whichever one.
Well, just one quick question.
Sure.
You stated that the easement would restrict, development, forever. Does it have any other, use restrictions or activity restrictions?
So we would be, so it restricts subdivisions. It restricts any alterations of the land itself, so. They couldn't go in and build another road, they couldn't dig do any kind of mining or sand gravel pits. They can't alter the flow of the water within the conservation easement. They can't store things on the property, like they can't store old vehicles or junk or, those types of things. So it's, so it's gonna restrict, the concept of the conservation easement is to keep it in the condition that it's in now. That condition will be conserved in perpetuity.
And for folks who aren't familiar with conservation easements, the Scarborough Land Trust is taking on an obligation to enforce those.
Yes,
Restrictions.
so one of the state law requirements. That the holder of the easement is required to monitor the property to ensure that those values are protected. And if they aren't, it's up to the holder of the easement, which is us, the land trust, to enforce it, meaning we would have to take them to court. We'd have to sue them to protect those values. And that's our responsibility forever.
And so, are you able to have plans like to put walking trails on?
So this is, that is, one of the things that the landowner has the right to. They can provide public access or they don't have to. Public access isn't a required conservation value within a conservation easement. So it's really up to the landowner. In this case, the landowner has chosen that they do not want public access at this time, so there won't be public access.
But you could. I mean, if the landowner agreed.
In the future, yes.
An easement, good.
In the case of any, yes, the landowner could agree to public access. They could change their mind, they could determine down the road to allow public access, but at this time they're choosing to not do it.
Are there trails there now?
There's no trails. There's like a road, like a woods road that cuts through.
Yes, because I've used that before.
Yes.
So you're saying if Scarborough Land Trust takes that over, are you gonna be, are there people accessing or using it now that they don't want to be able to, or they've never?
So it's always been private property, so it's always been up to the landowner to choose who they allow on their property. So that would continue.
Yeah.
The landowner would have that, continue to have that right to choose
To
who's.
live out there, and I'm pretty sure I used to use those trails. Good or bad, they're there. They're
And
nice.
they do allow, hunting. You know, they have agreements with certain folks to allow hunting on the property, and that will continue. So yeah, so they still reserve certain rights to be able to utilize the property, because they still own the property.
And
So that,
my understanding is their tax credit based on, you will be limited based on your package, if not like access, right?
Correct. So the value of the conservation even takes that into consideration, that the more values that you give, that you offer to the public, the more valuable the easement is, and the less values you give to the public, the less valuable the easement is. So that's that was taken into consideration in the price.
Not to muddy the water, but there are recreational easements are a thing in and of themselves. Like you can, some farms have easements, but then they allow recreational access along the river to go fishing. And that is itself a recreational easement. So it is actually a common piece. So I don't say it's easy to determine a value, but there are established standards for determining values of those various pieces.
And you know, the not allowing public access is also a very common
Yes.
component of conservation easements. You know, the majority of conservation easements don't allow public access. So, and just to bring it here, home, you know, bring it home here, the land trust, we hold 3 conservation easements in town that have no public access. And the town itself, the land bond, you know, the PCLB has authorized, and the town council has authorized land bond dollars to conserve land in the town with a conservation easement that does not have public access. That is the Comstock Farm. And in that case, the conservation values of that easement is that it's farmland. Now, whereas in this case, the conservation values are natural habitat, water protection, water resources, wildlife. Those are the conservation values. And what we talked about before, that one of the benefits of the conservation easement is that you can conserve the property at a lower price than if you're buying it outright. So in this case, we are requesting, and I guess if you want to bring up the budget at this point, we're requesting $260,000 for conserving the 60 acres.
I'm gonna see one that says budget. Overview? I've got an application or a letter to PCLB.
Well,
The figures in the letter.
I didn't get a budget.
I didn't get a budget either. I missed it. Was it attached to this? I didn't see it.
Is it attached? It wouldn't be attached to the application. I think that
The
was-
application is the
That's just-
second, it's second one.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah,
So then that was in the application, but
I didn't see.
I didn't get a budget in the back.
There's no budget in the back.
I don't see it in the folder.
I didn't see it.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I thought I would have given that to you. What's in, and then it was the assessment form, was the Excel document.
Yeah,
the cover page talks about the current assessed value at 703,000.
And then
And
the
the
other
appraised
appraised.
value at 260,000 for the easement.
Yes, I mean, the budget isn't that more enlightening than what I can tell you. The easement price is 260,000. So we're asking for 260,000 from the town to help pay for the easement. And then we also have stewardship costs. Project costs that go along with it, like the costs for appraisal, the costs for a survey, legal fees, staff time, stewardship fees or stewardship costs, because we are holding this property in perpetuity. I could give you, let me see if I can give you a,
I should have asked. I didn't realize it wasn't there.
yeah, I'm sorry, I thought I had included that in there.
Always looking for that Are conservation easements included in the open space plan? Yeah,
I think, yeah, one of the tools
Absolutely.
to
Okay,
establish.
it's considered one of the critical tools for conserving land is development.
yeah. Cause I looked at the definitions, it wasn't clear.
Okay, so the total project costs are 347, I'm sorry, the total project cost is 347,000 and change. Of which 260 is for the easement and the remainder is for project costs. So we would be, the land trust will be raising approximately $89,000 to pay for the remaining costs of the property. And then we were requesting 260 from the land bond. Now, one of the things that I think hopefully got included in the application process was I included a letter in there. So we've included this project in an application with other land trusts across Maine. An application to the North American Wetland Conservation Act, which is a federal program that pays for land acquisitions and land conservation. We included that in that application in December of last year, 2024. And so this has been a very successful, we've been awarded for 3 other properties in town. 100% of the properties that we've applied through this program, we've been awarded already through NACA. It's been a very successful program here in Maine. I feel very confident that we will get approved for funding for this property as well. The issue is that with federal funding, with NACA funding, the time it takes to get the funds actually released from from NACA takes a very long time. So we're applying we applied in December of 2024. You know, the earliest that we would ever expect to get any kind of funding would probably be like early 2027. So it's gonna be at least 2 years, and you know, honestly, it's probably could even be longer than that. It just takes a long time to go through the process.
It's still there.
And so this funding is really, it's almost like it's very difficult to be able to utilize this funding with timeframes that landowners look to protect their property, right? They can't wait 2 to 3 years to receive the funds for this. So in order for us to be able to access these funds from the federal government, we need to have financing that will bridge us in the meantime. We call it bridge financing or temporary financing. So that's kind of what I'm looking at this as again, and we've done this in the past. I brought this up in the past with you all. That we would use the land bond, and if we do get the funding awarded and released from government, then we would pay back the land bond. If we don't get the funding for whatever reason, then we would have used the land bond funding. So if you could switch to, we'll do the regular pictures, the overview. I'll just kind of show you. So this is some more habitat pictures that I wanted to show you.
Not the map, sorry.
So if you go to pictures overview.
Sure. So my first question is, when you have conservation easement for, is it on a parcel like this that is, the owner has whatever, you said 100 and some odd acres and the easement would be on 60 acres. Is it commonplace to have physical markers across the landscape denoting where that easement boundary is?
You can, yes, in this case, because there's not public access, it's not as critical for like the public to know where the easement property is. But the landowner would definitely want to, I mean, what they would typically do is keep up whatever signage they have to restrict trespassers, right? So they would keep that up. And then we can also put a sign that says, you know, land trust conservation area. We don't have to do that. The more important part would be the landowner, since they're retaining part of the property that isn't conserved, it'd be more important that the landowner understand where the conservation easement starts so that they don't infringe upon the easement area with something that they shouldn't be doing. So that's where we would, you know, mark out that line so that the landowner knows that where that is, and we'll have a survey and all of that to identify you know, where that lies.
And then kind of related to that, following up on Karen's point, which I think was a reflection of my question earlier, this would be called Forest Road. I guess I would encourage you guys to think about if the spirit of this is to protect wildlife resources, which I think it is, and I think that's awesome. Real things that happen on forest roads can degrade wildlife resources. So excessive use of ATVs during wet periods. The failure to build crossings on ATV trails over wet spaces. To think about that space and that existing road and your assumption that's going to continue to be using, think about what do we need to safeguard that those resources will be protected with the continuing use of this forest road access.
And I'd have to go back and check again, but I'm pretty sure that we're not even allowing motorized vehicles in the easement area unless it's for, you know, certain uses like, you know, to protect the property, to protect life, you know, that type of thing.
So snowmobiles and ATVs would be in your easement. This is what I was asking you earlier. You said you didn't mention this. So snowmobiles and ATVs would be explicitly prohibited except under emergency circumstances.
I believe so, yeah. I'd have to go double check, but I believe that's what we put in there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we will. All right, so there's some pictures here. So this is the upland areas, the drier areas of the property. There's quite a bit of dry area on the property. And where it's located on the property is right in the center of it. So it's between the one wetland area and the vernal pool area. So the value here is that if this area in the middle were to be developed, it would impact both of those areas, and it would impact the habitat, would fragment the habitat because it's dividing this into two smaller pieces again. So protecting the center portion of it, the drier center portion, is critical to really protecting the entire park. And you can see it is a beautiful area. You've got the white pines and oaks and other hardwoods through here. There's some open areas like that. So it provides a diversity of habitats, some early succession. So like some animals that like to be in open areas, some animals that like to be in shrubby areas, and some animals that like to be in more forested areas. You can keep scrolling up. Here's some more pictures of some of those low forests. We're going, you know, one of the values right there, if you go back down again, so you see all those small coniferous trees. That's great for deer, especially in the wintertime. They can hide back in there. When the snows are deeper, those areas tend to have less snow because the coniferous trees will block the snow from going to the ground. So that is excellent habitat for deer to be able to winter over and survive the winters.
Were some of these areas, they must have been logged, probably. That's why they have these all the succession, or no?
Some areas have been, and some areas, I mean, probably everything in Scarborough was logged at one point.
Yeah, right, but I mean,
But the
the
areas like,
recent
so the,
succession, yeah,
yeah, the more recent, so some areas have been more recently selectively harvested.
yeah,
There's still a lot of large trees in there and there's still a lot of regeneration.
Yeah.
There's some areas that it doesn't look like it's been logged probably for at least 100 years or so.
Oh, right.
Maybe a little less than that, but I don't see evidence of logging.
Yeah.
I don't see any stunting. So this is some of there are some spots with some steeper slopes. I just wanted to show you some areas there. You can see the topography, where the water will run out, some of this intermittent streams. I can keep going. That's one of another that's a very steep sloped area within the property. So we would definitely want to protect that from any erosion that would go down into Beaver Brook, causing impacts to the stream. These are the forested wetlands. So these are not the vernal pools. These are just, you know, just typical, like everyday run in the mill forested wetlands in there. You can see some of those shots in there. If you keep scrolling, some more wetter areas within the property, providing great habitat, doing a lot of resource protection in there. Some more pictures of the forested wetlands. More forested wetlands. Keep going, and then the next one, now these are some of the vernal pools on the property, so these are, so the little bit of difference between this and a forested wetland is, I mean, these are wetlands in a forest. But they tend to be a little deeper, where they can, during the wetter times of the year, so they can actually, the frogs and the salamanders will lay their eggs in there, and the water will stay in there long enough through the spring. It won't dry out fast enough so that the amphibians have a chance to hatch out, before it dries out completely. So these areas will stay wetter a little longer, a little deeper.
I just want to do a time check. It's 11.
Okay,
So I want to make sure we have enough time to fully go through the evaluation criteria. So
okay, if I can just get like 2 more minutes, I just want to show you. So keep scrolling. So these are some more of the vernal pools. I just wanted to show you one spot in here. So okay, so go up to that, picture, just more vernal pools. So if you scroll just a little bit more, I'm sorry, down. There we go. So right there, so those, you can see that there, sometimes it's hard to see, pictures are difficult also to capture them. But if you see the areas that were on the water there that look like bubbles or ripples, disturbances on the surface of the water, those are the egg masses. And if you look in that picture, you can see, I mean, there's tons of them in there. A very significant area for protecting. And if you scroll, they love to be in areas where there's a lot of woody material in the vernal pool, because that's where they'll attach the eggs to. So you can see that picture also, a lot of disturbance on the surface of the water. That's all the egg masses sitting right there at the surface. So I mean, they are, susceptible to, animals, dogs, if, different things run through those vernal pools that can really upset the egg masses and cause them to not be able to hatch. If you scroll just a little bit more, and one of the things you'll see here is, so it might, I don't know if everyone can see, if you see the disturbance on the surface right there, there's that little piece of the egg mass sticking above the surface. But if you look below the surface of the water, you can see the size of the egg mass is much greater under the surface of the water. So it's like almost like a, you can think of it like an iceberg, right? Where you only see the tip of it coming off the surface, but the majority of it is down below the surface. So if you look at those other pictures and you saw all those egg masses that are just on the surface, you can imagine how much is under the surface of the water and how many egg masses that we're really trying to protect here in these vernal pools. So you can keep scrolling. That's a picture kind of underwater of the egg masses, and you can see there's just thousands of eggs just within that one mass. It's a little bit of a closer up shot of them. All those, every little black dot is a, is an egg that will hatch into a frog or salamander. And I think I got the picture. If you scroll up just a little bit, I got a culprit. There's the culprit right there. There's one of the frogs sitting in the pool. One of the adult frogs that probably laid some of those eggs. Keep scrolling. And then this is the Beaver Brook area. And just one of the things that I wanted to show you about Beaver Brook is if you look at the creek, it looks like a light brown color. And you're like, oh my gosh, is that muddy water? But actually, no. In fact, that area is very sandy, and the water is so clear there, so clean, that you're looking through the water and seeing the bottom. You're seeing the sand at the bottom of the creek. So this water is incredibly clear, clean, valuable. This is all, again, what we talked about, as you can see it right in there. It looks almost like it's muddy in there, almost looks like chocolate milk, but you're really looking at the bottom of the stream and the water is so clear. So this is what we need to protect, this area, the headwaters of the Beaver Brook, because all that water goes right downstream and goes into the marsh. And we want the cleanest water going to the marsh to protect that marsh as well. So and you can see it again there. I mean, it almost doesn't even look like there's water in that one up on the top left there, but there's water flowing through there. It's just so clear that you're just looking at the bottom. And you can see the beautiful, the intact forested habitat around there that's helping, and the wetlands that are helping to protect that water. So it's and that's everything. So thank you. So I don't know if there's any other further questions.
I anticipate we'll have questions as we start to go through.
Actually, we went through a lot of them.
So
So
we-
I
yeah.
have a question about the numbers before we actually start with this assessment. I want to just run the numbers by it and sure I got it right. So the total acreage is 146.
or what the grants, what the grants are, yes,
And the conservation covers 60 acres.
correct.
And the assessed value is 703,800. That's for the 146 acres.
I believe so. Yes. Yeah,
And-
because there's no real way you can break out
Okay,
the 60 years.
so the recent appraised value, 260,000, that must be for the easement itself, right? Okay. And then 87,000 is the expected contribution from the land trust for stewardship, administrative maintenance.
I thought it was
I think
89.
it was 89, yeah,
89,000.
approximately 99,000.
Okay,
But that's
Okay.
just transaction cost, and there's ongoing costs, the store's coming, right?
Yes, it includes a portion of it. It does include for ongoing costs for stewardship. Yeah. So remember, we're spending money to monitor each year and resolve any issues that may come up.
has the 89,000 been appropriated in any way or reserved, earmarked, funded, refunded? Just part of the general budget.
So we are still currently fundraising to get the 89,000.
Okay, and will it be segregated, will it be set aside, or is it just become a general contingent liability?
So we do set aside the stewardship funding because that is a ongoing expense. So we set that aside in the stewardship fund. The remaining are costs that we've incurred immediately. So that pays for, you know, like for the appraisal, the survey, legal fees. So we're paying for immediate costs. Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we get started? Okay. Part or all of the property is, part one, tab one. Part or all of the property is in the 100-year floodplain, and that is based on a GIS analysis, of the Scarborough flood.
Can I stop you for 1 second? I'm noticing the two newer people not necessarily knowing we're a process, but you see it up there, right? Got it.
I have-
Okay, okay, good.
yeah, I have-
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Sorry. Okay.
So according to the GIS analysis, there is no part of this town of Scarborough floodplain mapped in the parcel.
Can't believe that.
I know,
I'm shocked. That can't be correct.
Sorry, what's the?
Floodplain, if you get 0 points for floodplain.
I don't think it's in a FEMA recognized floodplain.
Yeah.
But you know, we know that the area floods.
And there are points for the repair and corridor, which the property does get, so.
But if you, I mean, I drive through there all the time, just past Flaherty's, where it comes across Payne Road, that floods all the time.
Yeah.
So if we preserve this land, it's gonna reduce the risk of flooding. So why doesn't it get?
What is this FEMA? Well, that's a whole point question that goes back to, but what is the FEMA criteria? Do you know? Does anyone know here?
That's the map.
Oh, it's
the FEMA
bad.
map.
I know it's the I know it's the maps, but what is their criteria that gets the maps?
Well, the
It's-
maps were originally in the 1980s and we just approved them, so we're gonna have to take that up in another 40 years.
Oh, I thought there was, there hasn't been one.
We just approved them as part of the national.
I guess I just
Flood
was wondering,
insurance
do they
program.
don't include freshwater brooks, or do they only include? Flood, yeah, you know, that's what
They
I
have
was wondering.
very specific criteria. It's updated about every 40 years and we just updated ours, so that's not
On our school.
All right,
beyond our scope.
We have. Doesn't help with this discussion today, but. They have really good potential mapping coming out of the open space. plan.
Right, which is next.
I don't know when the heck, that's, you know, I mean, but these maps, I mean, their water, their environmental hazard map shows potential for marsh migration due to flooding. And as you look at that, I'm pretty sure, because I'm just looking, I think, trying to figure out where I am, that part of this property is included in a low to medium environmental hazard score for marsh migration, so not a floodplain. And then if you look at their maps for water quality, for water protection, groundwater protection, it's a very, very important.
Well, and that's why we're having the workshop next
Right.
month, it's under the existing criteria of the current evaluation matrix. It isn't accounted for, but we will go through the process of adjusting based on the new information. But unfortunately, it doesn't meet the standard that exists today in the evaluation criteria. Similarly, moving on to 2, first includes rare, significant, or endangered species habitat, and that's based on the beginning with habitat maps. Which we know there are limitations with that mapping, but, that it does not include any beginning with habitat mapped.
Can we take the word of these agencies that Scott just reported on?
Well, I think it comes in later. It's whether or not it's mapped, but there are, yes, it will be taken into
Okay.
account later.
You know, it's unfortunate for reaching the point.
Yes.
And we've known that for a while. Yes. I brought it up a year ago. It's that if those habitat maps are not updated effectively, and they aren't consistent with other sources, then we need to assess it.
So for example, 3, parcel includes area of special biological, geological significance. But for example, vernal pools, this is where we can add some points in for those features.
Well, that number 3 is certainly wrong. We know there are those are also documented in open space
Yes.
maps. So I don't know why they aren't showing whatever is being used there, but map reference beginning with habitat map viewer. I don't know. I just can't understand. This says January 2023 map 2. Should be updated. I'm not sure what those are showing, but they aren't consistent with our own open space.
So how many points would you?
Well, I think we saw with our eyes.
Right, exactly. But I was, how do you divide that 50 up?
Well, it's 10 points per feature, so we're supposed to. Originally, it was, do you have vernal pools, 10 points, do you have old growth, 10 points, do you have a peat bog, 10 points. And in this particular case, there's nesting areas, old growth and vernal pools, so that's at least 30 points. Right? Well, no, not necessarily the definition of old growth. But it's what?
We got nesting areas and we have vernal pools, but I'm not.
You're not
buying it.
talking about the old growth. Yeah, what's their definition of old growth? Sorry, that's
why I'm uncomfortable.
I know.
If I had something,
Yeah,
I
Okay.
believe an environmental professor before it's up to whatever those are. So I'm comfortable. I'm not saying there's no old growth. I just am comfortable unless it's about education. But nesting areas, vernal pools, those documents.
Was it nesting areas, bog and vernal pools, or just nesting areas and vernal pools?
I would like
bogs
to
is
say-
specific too.
I recommend that we have, that it has 30 points on nesting areas, vernal pools, and then, as Scott describes, this has Beaver Brook running through it, that provides, headwaters for those, freshwater aquatic organisms that need headwater habitat.
So 30 nesting, headwaters, vernal pools. So we just,
Technically though, yeah, I was just, I think you probably pick up on it, but I think technically that headward sort of habitat thing being number 2 gets the points. 20 and 3, I'm being picky, but
Yeah.
I think the habitat piece.
So for number 2,
Significant.
Scott did mention spotted turtles. And the challenge of this is that there's no, since this is private property, there's no survey.
But it says the habitat, it doesn't say the actual, right, if we're being extra here.
Totally.
That's why I said number 2, because it's significant habitat and or.
so that's 1 point per percentage of the total. And we don't have the ability to function like that.
Yeah.
But can we use the
Certainly,
outside
that's-
sources
Oh,
that Scott has referenced for habitat?
Well, it's
Would
the,
ducks, would,
we don't know what the percentage of the acreage total is.
Certainly over 50% if you look at this.
It's a challenge because like, let's just talk about spotted turtles, just for a simple case. Spotted turtles use vernal pools in really dry periods of the year, and they use them first time in the spring. And then they basically spend their most of the time in upland habitats, like moving back and forth. And so just saying the vernal pools would be spotted turtle habitat is true, but for only a small portion of their life history. They migrate up to 500 meters away from those vernal pools on a fairly regular basis. And so it's
but their gestation depends on those vernal pools.
exactly,
So without the vernal pools, you wouldn't have them.
right.
So what's the significance of the difference?
What I mean by that is that just saying that the habitat for them is just the vernal pools would be too restrictive of what their true use of the parcel would be.
You would
Oh,
expand the
okay.
percent, the acreage.
Yeah, you're talking about percentage wise.
Yes, right.
Okay,
And Scott, didn't we have other species, spotted turtles? Wood turtles, didn't we have some ducks in there, black ducks, American black ducks, wood ducks?
I know there's a listed species, it's just the spotted turtles. State threat in this species.
I don't know, I just think more than 50% of the parcel is, that's, but it doesn't, you know. And I agree with Doug that it belongs in 2 and not 3, but
okay, so 20 for 3. And then for 2. It's up to 50%, up to 50 points, which would be 50%. Are people comfortable with 50, or do we think of a smaller percent of the total acreage that is rare, significant, or endangered species? And I'm looking at that.
I'm comfortable with 50, for sure.
I am too, because read all of the statewide, look at the issues, it's in the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture, the you know, the main threat, you know, it's really valuable. If you just read the summary, you can see. Anyway, that's the one.
Is anyone uncomfortable with 50 points in 2? Okay, so we'll put 50 points and 50, and then I don't know that the 20 moved over to the,
No, there must be a
there
calculation.
must be a calculation there. Okay. Are we ready to move on to 4? Parcel contains high volume habitat in the top 25% of valuable habitat for freshwater, non-forested lakes, rivers, grass, shrubs, bare grounds, marine, intertidal or forest and forested wetlands. And Mike gave 100% for forested wetlands. There is 1 point per percentage of the total. It must equal 50 points or less, so it's just to be moving that from 100 to 50, because that's the max point total for this category as I read it. Total for number 4 must be 50 points or less.
That's correct.
Assigning the full 50 points. Okay. 5. So, rise protection to the saltwater marsh. That's based on those zoning overlays.
Well, we heard that this,
Yeah, I
We
mean,
heard
any
this.
water go in.
yeah, right? I mean, we heard that this flows into,
I think it's a limitation of the maps.
Yeah.
yes.
When we wrote this, we were thinking about adjacency as opposed to watersheds.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
Because it's tough. I don't disagree.
Yes.
And the open space planning documents for water quality, so certainly justify that this protects water quality, flooding, marsh at risk. And we can demonstrate that with the maps we have them to use for smaller pieces like this. But we didn't intend this to use.
That's true. No, you're right.
This-
You're
this
you're
piece of
absolutely right.
property Wouldn't have been seen as a marsh protection when we built this. Because we weren't trying to, it's not a watershed.
Is there another question, watershed question, maybe?
Yeah, there is. There, if you keep going down, I mean, that's the thing about this tool is that it,
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to give, with this question specifically is intended to say, does this protect the marsh physically? Because that also has additional value. Specific to the adjacency, protecting the elements. And then there are questions about water quality, flooding, and all that.
So it remains at 0. And then for wildlife corridor, part 6, parcel one says wildlife corridors, that's 50 acres. Or 50. I don't know. It's 1.100 feet, so it means.
I-
1,500 feet increments. I'm gonna have to like,
100 feet of what, frontage?
I guess if we are talking, you know, what we're talking about is what is the pass through?
I think that's,
Is that?
that would be
There's supposed to be-
5,000 feet, which would be. Yeah, I think,
I think what the answer is that it's 25 points.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, this is 25 points. And that was one that just didn't transport. Move over, so it's just. I think column I needs to be 20.
oh, it didn't move over.
And then. 7 is parcel includes public or recharge areas. And that is another.
That's
beginning of habitat.
based on the open space map. As clearly as I can tell and verify this. It's definitely a major area for water. For groundwater protection.
It's a 0.5 point per acre, it's a 60-acre parcel with a max of 25 points,
So it goes with the other five.
so it'd be 25.
Hmm,
I just explain to people, I'm answering questions here about open space plan. I'm looking at this map. If you look at the open space plan, you get a chance, you find the map that is open space focused map areas. And what they did was they identified all the open space in green, existing open space. Then the real dark purple is high value open space, and the purple or pink is contiguous open space focus
it seems
areas.
to be doing that calculation of a half. So am I
I think
supposed to
that-
put in 50?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're moving on to linkage buffers additions. So the size of parcel in acres and Micah's calculation is 56, it's a maximum of 40 points anyway, so it'd be a.
We have documentation from land trust, this is 68, what's the difference? Well,
I know it matters,
I'd like to
but
see,
we've had some.
It's still gonna be 40 points, because that's the
Still gonna
max
be
points.
Yeah.
well, I wasn't arguing about this question.
You can change that to
From
60
assist-
points,
I
right?
will do-
It's still
yeah.
gonna go 40, right?
Yeah.
She changed it to 60.
Okay.
I wonder if the difference was an actor piece to build the connection between people look and as the parcel.
I don't know, it's not, in my experience with
Is that-
GIS, it's not uncommon for there to be slight slivers that get carved off between a parcel map and such. So size 40 points. Doug, I had a question for you, because we continue to have this conversation on the shape. I know.
I mean, we can just ignore it. It's a valuable, shape is a valuable thing. I mean, if we were to do a shape analysis on this biologically, we would probably have to draw a rectangle in the middle of it and say, well, that's pretty good. because, you know. if you
A
take
circle's
out-
perfect.
if you
So
take
look,
out
you
all
could just put a
that,
circle right
and
down
you-
in there.
And you put it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now you've got what is a valuable shape, but the attributing points to that is definitely controversial, and, you know, we developed this a long, long time ago. And I went back to it for the committee, you know, technically, it does, it estimates the value of shape. Is it the best way to do it?
Just so that you know, the newer people, the reason why shape is important has to do with how species use particular habitats. And if you had a long skinny thing next to highway, that should not get as many, even if it was forested wetland and had a bunch of vernal pools, it was not gonna be as valuable. So this tool actually tries to build up more and more
Yeah.
points. And that's the reason why this shape was important.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it was something I developed a long time ago, and it was
It was
a
good though.
quantitative exercise. But I think
We're gonna skip it.
we should skip it.
Okay. Now,
I'd give it
3 creates a link between public or protected parks and 20 acres. I think that this is a miscalculation because it does connect to the other Beaver Brook property.
Yes.
And so I thought it should get the max. I thought it should get 30. Oh, is it connecting to 32 acres?
Yes.
So it's connecting to 32 acres, so that for me was falling between the 20 to 50 acres. But I didn't know if that's actually the total contiguous acres, which would be 90.
Well, there's another question.
Oh.
There's
Yes,
creating a link to
protect
protected parcels.
Okay.
and then created undeveloped
So if it's
parcels.
16,
And
that's
then there's a link to undeveloped parcels. So for this one, it would be 15,
15.
and then
Because
when you
it's
get
30.
over to
Number 5. Number 5 is
number 5,
It's
undeveloped.
we would
another,
get
oh,
50 points there because it's a connector to a very large undeveloped, very open.
that's good. So 3 is 15, 4 is 0, 5 is 50.
Does everybody understand how that got, what the difference is?
I don't know if it matters, given we're gonna change this next month. So I'm following, yeah, I'm following what the logic is.
And then 6, I also, because it. 6, I gave it 50. Because that was the max number of points. Parcel of lots public or protected land, 1 point per acre. So it itself is 56 to 60 acres. So therefore it's 50.
Just made a comment. I apologize. I forgot the name.
Steve,
Zam.
Zam, yeah.
Steve.
Oh, that's fine.
Or Zam.
Zam, either way.
No, outstanding.
These guys call me Zam, so you must.
Now, you just made a comment about this is gonna change next month.
Yeah,
We definitely are gonna change map references.
Yeah.
I mean. I don't believe the council or anybody else is asking to change references to connectivity.
oh, no, I'm just saying, the way
Habitat.
the whole thing, the way we assess. And score these things we're gonna evolve with the town open space plan. Is that my correction?
I don't think so. And this is my own opinion. And the reason I say
Yeah.
that is there's nothing in the open space plan that says that we shouldn't do an evaluation process. It says we have to.
No,
You
absolutely.
know, and
You have to.
furthermore, they don't get into detail about how do you calculate the value of certain size of a piece of property, the connectivity, the water quality, protection marsh, floodplain. There's nothing in the open space plan that guides recreating this kind of thing.
The reference.
Right.
But
No,
you're
I
also
understand, but
updating- you are updating this checklist. That is part of the goal this year, right? And that was one of the charters out of the
Yes.
space plan.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and that's what you're correct.
Yes.
when I see you reference this map, because. We're gonna try to get this information into here, that's what I'm kind of
Yes.
referring to.
Right,
Yes.
right, absolutely.
We're gonna update it with best available information and make sure that it's still communicating within the sheet. The way that we intended to.
Right. But I would personally argue, and I will in that meeting, you have somebody in the council is saying that the open space plan suggests that we shouldn't have documentation of the value of connectivity.
Oh, nobody's saying that
This
at
is
all.
how we might assess connectivity, might.
Right.
I mean,
Might update, parts might not.
yeah,
But we don't.
based on what has to be.
So we did 6. So now we're on 7. Parcel is near protected lands. I didn't have any change to that, 28 points. Did anyone else have changes?
We gave it points for connecting them. Where's the near protected land? I mean, I don't understand the difference between those two.
He said it was less than half a mile.
Oh, to other,
Less,
There's a large piece of protected land just north of this. And I, unfortunately, on this, map, I just
yeah.
don't have spaces, but it's and then there's some small piece of protected land for developments to the west.
The idea is that there's the ability to connect.
Right. Okay.
So above, we gave points to adjacency. Whereas this is the ability to connect if we convince those landowners. Whether or not, so that's what I mean about building the point system based on.
so I think that the only discussion point is it 28 based on 56 or do you want to assign 30 based on?
No. Wait, what's the question?
So according to the survey, it's 60 acres. According to the parcel data in the Mike used for GIS, it was 56. That's what Doug was talking about.
Oh.
So that would mean 2 more points.
They're on.
So-
they're on-
I mean, if I may interject on this, so our intent is to conserve 60 acres.
Yes.
Probably what Mike is basing his number on is the parcel size in the GIS program.
Yes.
And the outline of that parcel is not survey quality, so it gives you a general idea of where the lines will be, but you can't really use that, we're not gonna use that as our survey.
Correct.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
So,
It's just a GIS. Oh,
60.
Yeah,
so 30, or do you want to say
yes, 30.
30? Okay, so that's down to 28 to 30. 8, parcel provides a 100-foot wide buffer of natural vegetation from the edge of rivers, streams, saltwater, freshwater marsh, beaches and bays. So this is where, while it's not in the floodplain, we are capturing the benefit. I don't want to say that, the benefit of that stream corridor, and it is
So your
20 the maximum.
documentation.
Yes,
The
20.
documentation we have, Scott, says 3,500 feet on Beaver Brook. Of frontage on Beaver Brook.
correct.
It still maxes out at,
So why is it 1929? Yeah, it's still maxed out, but
Yeah.
just curious of why it was 1929. That's considerably. Does yours include both sides of the streams? No. Or maybe.
The frontage? What do you mean?
So the number,
the buffer.
the
So
buffer, does your buffer number include both sides of the stream?
both sides of the stream are protected within the.
Right, and I have a feeling that the GIS, he only used one side of the stream.
Yeah.
Because 3,000, what was your number?
We
What-
max out
35.
anyway, so I.
Yeah, we
I-
max out, but we need to tell him. Or it communicate to
Yes.
the GIS what that intent was.
Yes, so that means
It's 3,000 what?
20 for 8,
3,500.
20 for 9.
Well, it looks like down below, he's got another one. There's each side of the stream scored individually. So did he just double it up between?
No, one is
9?
100 and one is 250. And so we gave points specifically for 100 and specifically for 250.
Oh,
And we wanted to double that up,
35, is that what you said?
20.
We wanted.
3,500 acres.
Oh, yes,
I mean.
Or footage.
Footage.
Offer is large. I want to get it.
yes. Yes.
Is there a reason why that maxes out? Is it more better in all cases?
You know, the numbers get untenable.
Hmm.
You know, so. So the idea was to, come up with. You know, a quantitative method
Mhm.
that didn't result in huge swings in property, so we couldn't compare. So it's almost like saying, another way to say it is, if you check it off, if you're above this level, you're checking it off, we got it, you know. But if you're below that level, you get some credit for it in terms of.
So 10 is slope. Do you have any knowledge of, I mean, we saw a photo of it, steep slopes over 20% grade.
Yes, there are definitely parts of the property that have over 20% grade. Are you looking for like an acreage amount or?
If any,
Yeah, it does say that.
unless some words have been cut out.
Well, we don't have access to the engineering map, maps and I need to talk about this happening, so.
I mean, there's a topographic map in the application.
Yeah.
When the map is topographic, it's not gonna say it's 20% slope, but you can definitely.
It's very, yeah, very steep. The lines are touching each other
But yeah, it looks.
at a 2 foot contour, so it's pretty steep. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines.
The purpose of putting this in, when we did it, was that the steep slopes encourage erosion. And protecting areas with steep slopes, discourages erosion.
I can tell you that on the Beaver Brook, as you go up the property, there's steep slopes on both sides that go right into the creek. So I mean, if those areas were to be compromised, you have a lot of material going into the creek.
They look pretty steep
Here's
in the
super.
topo maps.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've
But
almost
that'll-
become solid.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So are we comfortable? So it looks like it's 100 points.
If any.
If
There
any.
must, no, I think
Already really
something,
like-
I think something is cut off, but I wouldn't know, actually.
Must be 100.
It doesn't say.
Mine doesn't say it.
It's got a tiny note below that says maximum points, if any.
Mm,
You want to go back to 0?
Yeah, well, you have testimony that there are percent grades, but we don't have. We don't have that.
Yeah, we were looking at this.
just,
Yeah.
Topo maps. Yeah, I know.
Those,
A lot of points.
there's a little bit of clue here when it says can be included in net residential density. It's that parcels on those steep slopes could have, is included in development potential. So that is a clue as to the intent of why we did this also, besides protecting the. But
Could you submit something after?
yeah,
Evidence? I mean,
Yeah.
Tusky's here saying.
yeah,
it
let's just,
exists.
Yeah.
why don't we just,
And I just want to throw that out there. Like,
Let's
if
put
you
it
feel
in
like-
place. And if the land trust applicant has evidence of steep slopes, then we can revise that before I write if we just, it's recommended, before any recommendation.
I would just need clarification on what evidence would be. What would that be? What evidence would be?
I think we just need the data behind the topo maps. It's just
the topo.
Just give us the measure.
just,
At what area? You know,
There's a
these are
small
so
area.
small.
There's a,
Right, I can see them, but
Yeah.
this is so small that you can't really see if that's 3 lines or 5 lines or 6 lines, so. And if you do a calculation, what the slopes are,
Okay,
that'd be helpful.
all right, I'll try and do that.
well, it's not the entire length of this field, but it's a big chunk.
Right.
That looks,
okay, so we're requesting additional information as it relates to tests. So moving on to 3, which is parcel provides public access, that's obviously zero because it does not allow, for the conservation, it does not allow for public access at this time. Which also relates to 4, which is provides opportunities to recreation. I know that the landowner does allow for some recreational use at this time, but because it's not included in the easement explicitly, I say 0. Then we move to community character. And Micah had assigned 50 points because it is 56 to 60 acres of forest land. And it's 1 point per acre.
So here's the intent of this was scenic views, and I would argue that
Nobody looked.
there's no,
way to
there's
see
no
it.
public access,
Yeah.
there's no road, you can't see it, it's nothing. This was specifically to protect our views, but if you wanted to say community character, if in the future, when we're looking at this one, obviously the character of this community is really nice to have habitat for bears, and so it is just the intent. I know what the intent was for this.
Right. And one of the things to think about when talking about updating this is is there a value to the community of open space? We don't have that question, or that was sort of a given, open space is valuable. But this community has actively stepped forward and said that open space is important to us. And we've even documented to some degree how much open spaces, even though that's, it's gonna change over time. While this was intended to protect what people see as they drive around, that was the thought process. Because we were, all you have to do is drive to the areas where development is occurring. It's very different than areas where development is not occurring. And what does my town feel like as I drive around? Is it, are buildings increasing? Not, that sort of thing. But in addition to that, I'd love to see us get some points for whether this is adding for open space or not. Maybe we pick it up in the other questions anyways, but this is specific.
So 0 points in column I, and further discussion at our workshop. And that then moves to public investment. And I think that there's, because of the NACA grant application, which was submitted in December, I think that there is leverage potential on the 50. It's 50 points maximum, because it is per acre. So
Yeah, this is like.
it's up to 100% with NACA, so I am comfortable of,
Yeah.
assigning 50 points. For a potential match, because we haven't seen that one in the past.
I agree.
Okay.
It's, if we got reimbursed, it's 100% reimbursement.
But that's, I'm sorry, Scott.
Yeah, I know it's an if.
I think in our current political environment, I'm questioning that, questioning all federal.
I don't think it's fair to penalize this application compared to in comparison to past applications where federal funding was more consistent,
I'm good with that.
right? Because if we're looking at this parcel versus others, I mean, what's gonna happen next week?
Well.
Yes.
And it is appropriate for the land fund.
Well, that was my feeling is, I think we should evaluate this on it. Assuming it's good use of the land bond money. And if we get the money back, that's great. Versus say, we're gonna get the money back anyway, so this is good enough. That's for underwriting.
But it does have match.
They've applied for an existing federal grant. There's no current information at the time of our evaluation that the resources are not available. So anything beyond that is just speculation.
Yeah.
we've never evaluated anything on the basis of this assumption. That we would get, that they would take that it's. we
Yeah,
give
it's
points,
one
But
little
the-
point,
we
yeah.
give some
I'm sorry,
points
that-
On this.
Has
if
this
there's a
been approved
possibility.
already and the money's just pending? Or
No,
it's,
it's
you have, you've
No.
applied?
You applied for the grant. We have not been awarded it yet.
They have in the past.
This is where we gave them credit for that,
Okay,
saying that they're.
all right, so if as long as it's consistent.
We have potential for a grant. so
Okay,
we're gonna
good.
give some points. And, well, with some properties, you know. there's no
Possible,
potential.
possible, I like it, okay.
We're also, the land trust is going to be providing
Yes.
match funding as well through the project costs. So we're a partner in that.
But that wasn't the intent, but thank you.
Well, partner match. Well, also it's. This parcel was part of a package for the state of Maine, so it's not, it already met some thresholds for, I don't know, viability is not the right word, but it's already sort of been evaluated
For value, for wildlife value.
for wildlife value and chosen to be included as part of a grant package, so. I think that's a stronger case for the potential match. Because it's already been sort of viewed highly external.
Does, does a property like this warrant public investment?
Yes.
Is it, is it something that can be purchased, or is there something like an easement that can be purchased? And is there potential for partnerships that would, share the cost with the public?
And then,
Or one give credit in a scoring system, give credit, that's the idea.
So
That-
50 points.
step 445 points.
Presuming it's.
that?
Presuming it's calculating it all correctly, right? It looks like it.
Partners, we're comparing that to. For the basis.
And we just skipped one, or actually we skipped two. Because of that shade. I think that shade would be.
So how do you,
Where are the? Isn't there a spreadsheet? No.
I mean, is that a good score?
We look at the points for property.
Yeah, there is.
If you've scored.
That score's really that pretty high compared to just off the top of my head.
Yes, it's
You
in the
can
sheet.
go into the, let's see if I can find it.
I think you're talking about this is the value of this is not even the relative comparison, right? It's a way to qualify what features this parcel offer conservation value in comparison to other past conserved
Oh,
parcels.
sorry.
Rather than saying, oh, that one was 604 and this is 209.
Well, there's also the size.
Oh.
What I want to attribute.
You know what? People rearrange it. And I'm not in
Oh,
any rearrange it, so.
What makes this kind of evaluation tricky is that.
How about go into that?
Basic way to do this would be a checksum.
I just want to see if there's a.
So what that does
Is there all the sites of value? Folder that says comparative.
And we.
You know, they
when
want
we
to-
were developing,
go back
and
and-
I still feel strongly about it, even though we can change things, that's fine. But I'd still rather see us
Go in back.
have the ability to provide more or less value for certain types of features based on what we feel is.
Weight things in priority.
Did you go in forms?
Just before we agree on the summary. In items 2 and 3, we took other information beyond what was provided by the GAS. Can we do that for question 1 as well, knowing that
That's as far
That's
as.
it.
you think it's in the floodplain
There's a lot of stuff missing.
in the new data
It's just-
or in the town's mapping?
Generally,
I think we were trying to balance the data source and the original intent. And
But
so
we
that,
took that into consideration on 2 and 3 as well. We took new data. We
right, and the intent part, I think the. Sorry.
And the only thing that we have in terms of the new mapping that is sort of lens itself, that is the market rate mapping. And this does not fall into that. Except it looks to me.
This is a general.
Yeah.
This is a teeny thing, and I
Yeah.
hate this, I'm looking at these things, I printed them out.
Yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
So that.
And if I look at it, you know, there's, and if I'm in the right place, it's so hard to find. It looks like there might be a touch, but none of it's in the,
okay.
in the.
So should that number one say the NOAA,
Is
based
that
on
all
the
of it?
NOAA flood plan maps?
Oh, the FEMA?
The FEMA,
Jessica.
sorry.
We're running a little bit
Yes.
late,
Yes.
so I just, for the benefit of new people, what we do is we take that final score. And then we will memorialize that as part of our evaluation documentation. So that we can prove that we made some kind of objective assessment. It's useful to then take that and compare it to other properties. But that does not bind us to vote in favor of or against the application. That helps us to rationalize why we've done that. So,
Is not a line.
no, there is not. You don't have to have like a minimum score in order to get it. So I think we should kind of move along.
And part of the value, I think, is the discussion.
Yes. So generally speaking, that it is a high score
For 60 acres.
for 60 acres. I think we've been in the 200s, but that doesn't, as we said, it's not a defining characteristic, it's just as part of the discussion.
We couldn't find the whole thing
Okay,
Scoring.
with the scoring, which I can look through, but I think a lot of things have changed. You guys have reorganized it a little bit. That
Right.
drive, there's stuff that's missing, all the reports that were loaded up.
So as the next step to, it's called to vote,
yes.
so I make a motion to vote.
A second,
So is there any discussion or do we want to?
Just one thing I'd like to add, I would like to make sure that we get the budget put into the
Yes.
documentation.
So we are formally requesting data on the slope and the budget document, confirming the budget document. The numbers that you provided to us in the discussion. Are there any other materials that folks are missing?
I'm a little concerned about voting without the budget.
Well, it's not on the
Is
amount.
budget part of the evaluation process?
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, it's not a formal part of the application. We have the formal form.
I understand, but it's sort of something part of our evaluation process. We have had some discussion with the budget involved. If people are feeling like they know nothing about it, that's fine. Budgets and budgets are, doesn't even get that,
I think you can move forward without the budget. I understand that you're uncomfortable with that. I think that's not the basis of the evaluation. I feel like more town council maybe wants to see the budget and how their money's being used. That's just my initial kind of response. I don't want to hold this whole process up because of that.
Well, we know that the formal request is for $260,000, which is below the, well, which is the, there's the price.
seven number three is the two.
It's 37% of the actual appraisal.
which is consistent with what you expect for, and I actually looked this up. You know, Googling this and saying, you know, what should you expect to be paying for conservation easement? In a situation where you don't have access, and that's right in the range, right in the middle of the range. It made me feel pretty comfortable with this price as well.
And for those of you who are interested, it's my understanding is $4,333 per acre.
Which is super, super low.
Amazing. It's appraised at $700,000 for the total. I mean, it's all wetlands. It's scary.
Yeah. I just think just a note maybe for the record, but I think we're underestimating the flood mitigation value of this property, because we don't have anything. It's almost.
I would agree.
Yes.
That is a conservative evaluation.
And I also think, we haven't gotten enough of these easement things, in my opinion, because bang for your buck is right here.
Yeah.
If you look at the values of this property, there's a lot of bang for the buck. And I'm actually really excited to do this.
We should be promoting more of these. I mean, you get almost 99% what you want to get for half the price.
Yes.
And there is potential for more conservation land in that area, which when you look at the map, it's kind of important to us as a town. Try to conserve if it's possible, if the sellers are willing. There's not many big areas like this out there.
So do you want to give a stab at a resolution? I mean, we have to, the Parks and Conservation Land Board recommends to. No,
But this
no,
is
you
the
have to
vote.
You have to vote on the resolution,
Well,
right? Then we have to vote on what our recommendation
we can,
is, and then whether or not.
we can just say, he already moved to vote to approve the,
That we approve the,
Right, that's
that we recommend approval of funding to the town council
how much.
of $260,000.
That's what I meant. Like, we need the language of what we're voting on.
Yes. So I move, my move is that we, vote to recommend approval to the town council to, pay for $260,000 from the land bonds to, for this parcel 49 grant road.
Is there any discussion before we take a vote? All those in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Okay, excellent. We had more items. I think we need to wrap up. Yeah, so,
I'm sorry, Chuck. So we just printed off the budget and we'll hand it out to y'all. So you guys
Thank you.
can copy of it.
so we have a meeting in a couple weeks. We're going to meet on April 3rd. We have 2 hours set aside, not 100% on the room yet, but I was asked that. And the entire purpose is a workshop. We won't be voting on anything. It will just be the open space plan.
So I just texted, or I just communicated with Jamie about getting copies of it.
Yeah, and Jamie should be joining us.
And
But I was gonna say, I did print some copies of the draft, because that's all there was at that
Yes,
point.
okay. But she says there's no final yet.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
Do we know when they will be final?
What's that?
You did.
She will have.
Or they're making a, we can still meet and have a workshop, right, even before it's.
I don't think there's gonna be any changes. I'm surprised it's not being approved earlier.
Okay,
So.
I think it's, we do it twice, I mean, do it every twice. That's why
you
I
also
asked.
should have a copy of the acquisition reserve
This is
fund
the first,
authorization
and then
report,
the
which is
second.
then, but yeah, so next time we're meeting a little earlier because, we expect that it's gonna be a robust discussion.
so what time are we meeting then? On April 3rd? 9?
We're
9 to
meeting at
12.
9.
And expect to 3 hours? Or how many
Least.
hours?
We've got 2 hours.
2 hours, okay.
Yeah, right.
And we're really gonna go, there are 3 pieces, actually. There's the open space plan. What that means for the evaluation process, and then if there are any changes. To the book.
Well, that part's gonna take.
I don't think we're gonna get through all of it.
Yeah.
I think we can identify the areas that need
Yeah.
updating
Yeah.
at that point.
Yep.
And is that in the public
Are we
safety building?
here or are we at the other side?
I'll
let you
check,
know.
I'll have to check
Yeah, we'll
the
have to
calendar.
confirm.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure it's here. Pretty sure that was the only meeting
I
that
think that was
was
pretty sure that's
there. But we'll double check.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Move to,
You know,
Jessica, a move to adjourn.
Second, okay, we're adjourned.